Edie was 16 years old, the youngest of 3 sisters. And more than anything, she loved to dance. She was talented. She worked hard at it, going every day after school. Eventually, dance morphed into gymnastics. She got so good, she was invited to join the Olympic national team. Until one day, her teacher came to her with tears in her eyes and told her that because of her background, she would no longer be able to compete. Edith was living in Nazi-occupied Hungary, and Nazi-occupied Hungary had new rules about who could do what. Passover morning, a knock on the door. Edith and her family are told to pack suitcases, and they are sent to Auschwitz, a place they had not heard of. When they got there, there was music playing in the camp, and after the several days of the cattle cars eating nothing, they thought maybe this will be a nice place after all. Joseph Mengele waited for them, as he did all new arrivals. He sent Edith's father off with the men, and then her mother to the left, Edith and her sister to the right. Hours passed. Edie is numb from the separation from her mother, the hours spent standing naked in the cold, waiting for the gray uniform she now wears. She's herded into a gloomy barracks where she will sleep with 100 other girls, crammed into groups of 6 on shelves that line the walls instead of beds. She is heartbroken and she is terrified. Outside it is growing dark, and again, music begins to play. Mengele, it turns out, is a lover of the arts. At night, he trawls among the barracks, searching for talented inmates to entertain him. On this night, he walks in with his entourage of assistants and casts his gaze over the new arrivals. Some of the girls know Edie is a dancer. They push her forward. "Little dancer," Mengele says, "dance for me." He directs the musicians to begin playing. She hears the familiar opening of the Blue Danube waltz. She's lucky. She knows this one. She knows the music, the dance. She closes her eyes and hears the words her mother told her in their final days of freedom. We don't know where we're going. We don't know what is going to happen. Just remember, no one can take away from you what you put in your mind. All of your ecstasy in life is going to come from within. Edie closes her eyes, imagines herself on the stage at the Budapest Opera, and begins to dance. The high kick, the pirouette, the turn, she can hear the music, but also Mengele talking to his assistants the whole time. He is watching her. Despite her terror, she dances beautifully. The music shifts, and now she hears Tchaikovsky, Romeo and Juliet. As I danced, she wrote in her memoir, I discovered a piece of wisdom that I have never forgotten. I can see that I am free in my mind, which he can never be. As I close my routine with a final graceful split, I pray. I pray for me and I pray for him, for his sake, that he won't have the need in his mind to kill me. The music stops. He must have been impressed because he tosses her a loaf of bread. As evening turns to night, Edie shares the bread with her sisters and her 6 bunkmates, grateful to be alive. I read this story during my COVID quarantine. All right, I know some of you watch mindless TV and the Comedy Channel when you're sick. I picked up the Holocaust Memoir. It's by Edith Eger, who wrote her first book at the age of 90, and I heard her on Oprah. That's how I heard of the book. It's called The Choice, Embrace the Possible. And yes, we will have a book club to read it together. As soon as I read it, I knew I wanted to share pieces of her story with you on these Yamim Noraim. So a few days later, I'm talking to my friend. That's what rabbis do. We, call each other frantically in the days leading up to Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? And I say, I have this story. And I tell her the story, and she says, that's a Yom Kippur story. And I said, no, that is a Rosh Hashanah story. We don't know where we're going. We don't know what is going to happen. Just remember, no one can take away from you what you have put in your mind. All of your ecstasy in life comes from within. Adonai li v'lo ira. It's the last line of the Adon Olam. Adonai li v'lo ira. God is with me. I will not fear. Adonai, Yud He Vav He in the Hebrew, it's the verb to be, being, to be, source of life, Spirit, Holy Spirit, the Kadosh Baruch Hu, God, Adonai, force of nature, whatever word you use to express the force of nature which is greater than all of us. Adonai li is with me, is mine. V'lo ira, I will not be afraid. Adonai li v'lo ira, I am alive. I am not afraid. This does not mean that the world is not a scary place. The world is a terrifying place as the media shouts at us and as social media amplifies. Pastor Nadia Boltz-Weber compares our psyches to the old apartment building she lives in, where if you're running the air conditioner and you turn the hair dryer on, the fuse blows. That's our psyches. She writes, our psyches were just not developed to hold, feel, and respond to everything coming at them right now. Every tragedy, injustice, sorrow, every natural disaster happening to every human across the entire planet in real time, every minute of every day and every night. The human heart was not developed to hold all of that. The human heart was developed to hold what is happening, as Dan said, in our community. So our emotional circuit breakers are overloaded. And then you go on social media, and there's this sense that if you aren't doing something about fill in the blank, then you are part of the problem. So quick, go, post something, show that you care about fill in the blank, and that fill in the blank list is so long, show that you are not of the problem. The media has us thinking, just this week, about environmental disaster, nuclear disaster, potential civil war, racial justice and gender injustice, abortion rights, inhumane treatments of immigrants, a hurricane in Florida, volcanic activity in New Zealand, human interest stories from around the globe featuring hospital workers, problems in India, human rights abuses in Africa, a right-wing election in Italy, and thank God we have Aaron Judge going for the home run record. And of course, this is without mentioning our actual lives. The days we spend waiting for the results of the lab test, going through a divorce, the torture of watching our children struggle with physical or mental illnesses, burying people we love, enduring layoffs, wondering if we will find work again or how we will pay our bills. Our circuits are overloaded. on Rosh Hashanah, for the whole month leading up to Rosh Hashanah, and for these first weeks of the new year, we recite Psalm 27. Adonai is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Adonai is my strength. Of whom shall I be afraid? Though armies be arrayed against me, I will not fear. And the closing lines of the psalm, mine is the faith that I will see goodness in this life, in the land of the living. Can you imagine if our news stream buzzed at us? We strapped it to our wrists with our Apple Watches, and it buzzed last night. Thousands, billions of parents cared for their infant children all night long. They got up 5 times over the course of the night to soothe and to feed and to clean and to nurture. Isn't that amazing? Can you imagine if every one of us caregiving for parents, for loved ones, if that were the breaking news in our news feed all day long? Adonai li v'lo ira. So how do we do this? I want to share this Rosh Hashanah morning a 3-part recipe. First, turn it off. The phone, the news, the constant reminders of things that aren't actually happening to you. Starts today. Confess, how many of us are struggling right now this morning not to check your phones as you sit here in shul? How many of us will leave here and the first thing we'll do is see on the phone, turn on the TV, check to see what we missed? Turn it off. Starting today, see if you can unplug for the rest of the day. See if you could last all the way through to the end of Yantif tomorrow night. Maybe that's the beginning of practicing. Maybe turn it off for all of Yom Kippur. Maybe a Shabbat practice. Take a weekly tech Shabbos. Every Friday night, gather all of the phones, all of the electronics, the tablets, the remote controls, everything in your house, turn them off, put them in a drawer, and light your Shabbos candles. See if you can last. See the difference it makes in your hearts, in your level of anxiety and fear to unplug for the night. Could you last the whole day, a whole Shabbat, each week? We do not need to be afraid, and we choose what we put in our minds. So step 1, live up close with what is really happening to you by turning it off. Step 2, go deep within. We don't know where we're going. We don't know what is going to happen. Just remember, no one can take away from you what you put in your mind. 16-year-old Edie dancing for her life. She closed her eyes and felt only what was happening to her right then. Just the music, just her body. That is teshuvah. That is what we do, going inside, going deep inside so we can choose what we put in our minds, so we can find the ecstasy within. We cannot choose what will happen to us this year, but we can choose how we respond. With so little control, the only thing we can control is our attitude, how we react. And so pray, meditate, sit outside, walk outside, cultivate practices that nurture your ability to find the ecstasy within. Which brings us to step 3, Gemilut Chasadim, acts of kindness. Acts of loving kindness, helping others, actually helps nurture and sustain us. And I did not even know that Dan was going to share the Grant study, but exactly what he said. In his book, Who Really Cares?, economist Arthur Brooks cites study after study showing that Americans who make gifts of money and time are more likely to prosper and be satisfied with life than non-givers who are demographically identical. I'll repeat that. Americans who make gifts of money and time are more likely to prosper and be satisfied with their lives than non-givers who are demographically identical. Another study by Notre Dame social scientists concludes that the more generous we are, the more happiness, health, and purpose in life we enjoy. Edie shared her bread, but it helped her too. Of course, this is not just my recipe. It's what the central prayer of our High Holiday Liturgy that we will daven together just a few moments from now gives us. After the prayer's litany of who shall live and who shall die, it gives us a threefold prescription to take agency over our lives for a good year, a good life, by doing tshuva, returning to ourselves away from the noise, tefillah, cultivating spiritual practices to help us find the ecstasy within, utzedakah, giving of ourselves, extending ourselves to others, Adonai li velo ira. So here is the rest of Edie's story. 1 year later, Edie's body was pulled from a pile of corpses after the death march from Auschwitz to the slave labor camp, a trek that only 100 out of 2,000 who start will survive. How did Edie make it? Well, she almost didn't, of course. Edie had a broken back, typhoid fever, and dysentery as the march began. And after marching for days, she found she just could not go on. Of course, if you stop, if you fall, that's it. That is the end. She doesn't even realize she has stumbled in her delirium until she feels hands underneath her. Her sister and her 6 bunkmates have laced their fingers together, locking arms to form a human chair. As they lift Edie gently into their arms, she hears one of them say, "You shared your bread. Now it is our turn to lift you." May we be a people who renew ourselves by knowing Adonai li. We do not need to be afraid. We only need to remember to link arms, hold hands, and lift one another up so that we will all be inscribed in the book of life.